Thank you for coming out this evening to join us at the City of San Diego's Community Forum, asking your input on the recruitment of our next police chief. Thank you for making this a priority on your Thursday evening. We have a full agenda, and we really appreciate you making the time to provide input this evening. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the city's Chief Operating Officer, Scott Chadwick, and he'll welcome you as well and provide a few opening comments. Scott Chadwick.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. First, just like Danelle said, thank you all so much for attending this. This is our 5th of 6 community workshops that we've got occurring throughout the city of San Diego. And why are we here? Great question, right? This is a critical position in the city of San Diego. You're here to help us select our next police chief. And I cannot thank you all for participating in this. This is a big hire for the city of San Diego. Now what I've got is basically the city of San Diego's constitution, and this is really, it's called the city charter, and I want to read specifically what the language states about this process. And specifically it says, the police department shall consist of a chief of police and such other officers, members, and employees as council may from time to time prescribe by ordinance. The chief of police shall be appointed by the city manager, and the appointment shall be confirmed by a majority of council. So what that means, obviously we no longer have a city manager. What we have is a strong mayor, and that position, it's the mayor's duty and responsibility to select the next police chief. Now let's face it, doing it alone, he did once. That was where we've got the existing police chief, Shelley Zimmerman, but her time she went into what's called the Deferred Retirement Option Program. It's a plan in which it allows individuals to identify a retirement date. They can only serve in the city for 5 years, and then they have to leave. So that's Shelley's position. Chief Shelley Zimmerman, she's going to be actually retiring from the city of San Diego in March. So what that means, though, is we got to get on the ball, and we got to start moving forward with trying to hire our next police chief. That's where all of you come into play. So we've established, we're trying to be as open and transparent as possible to ensure that we actually have a robust public participation. That's why we've got these 6 community workshops. We also have on the city's website, which is sandiego.gov, if you go there, there's a survey. So those individuals that aren't able to attend an event like this, they can actually go to the city's website and then fill out the survey to talk about the same issues that we've got going on. Because Danelle's a fantastic facilitator, and she's going to be walking you through this evening's agenda. But what we're going to be doing is asking you 3 critical questions that we've got these table formats or this table setting, and we want you to have a discussion to come up and answer basically these 3 critical questions. First one, what are the top 3 priorities that the next police chief is going to have or encounter? The next question is, what are the top characteristics you'd like to see in your police chief? And then, of course, the last one is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to see covered? So we want to hear from you. Please be open. If something's on your mind, make sure that your spokesperson for your group brings it up. And again, we want to hear. You'll notice that we've got we're televising all of this, and the reason for that is all of these forums we are actually uploading. We're putting it on YouTube because we want the public, anyone who hasn't been able to attend, we want them to also see the discussions. So if you want to see what occurred in last night's, you can go to the city's website. We'll have all of this information. Or if you want to see what the discussion that we had at the LGBT Center, which was last week, you can have that access too. But again, survey, community forums, and then the city's webpage, which is sandiego.gov/nextpolicechief, we're going to have all the information. And this is the first step in our process. We've now hired a recruiter. They're called Bob Murray and Associates. They've hired over 140 police chiefs over the last several years. So the city of San Diego, we don't typically hire a police chief every year. This is something that typically someone's in the position for a while. So that's why it's always best to go with where the talent is. And if someone's talented enough to continually do a recruitment process, we want to take advantage of that. And we want to use their knowledge, their wealth of experience to assist us as we progress in the selection of the next police chief. So with that said, I want to pass it over to Danelle, and I look forward to hearing all of your comments. Danelle?
Very good, thank you. Appreciate it. Glad you're here. All right, we're going to walk through the agenda, and I would draw your attention to the page on right in front of you, the sheet of paper, because it's really hard to see this chart right up here, but it says the same thing. The way we're going to ask for your input this evening is in a group format. We're going to ask the 3 questions that Scott mentioned, and instead of having just individual answers, the first thing we're going to ask you to do is talk with the people at your table and listen to their comments. And then we'll have each of the tables have an opportunity to share what their conversation, the top themes and priorities from their conversation with the whole group. We'll take that same process through each of the questions that Scott mentioned. And those 2 are on the second sheet on your page. It says participant input form. We want to both have the charts that you share, but also your individual thoughts. If you take a moment, please, when we ask the questions, and put your thoughts down. We're going to collect those input sheets as well. So multiple different ways that we're gathering your thoughts this evening. So let me just run through the questions again. We're going to go through them one by one, but we would want your input on. What are the top priorities our next police chief must address? The second question, what are the top characteristics and qualities, the leadership, the traits, the characteristics that our next police chief must possess? And then finally, that catch-all question, is there anything else that you'd like the city to be aware of, to have, to put their attention on during the selection process for the next police chief? So those are our 3 questions. And if you've been to workshops before, you know that there are typically guidelines that people set out that make working as a group effective. And we're borrowing from the National Conflict Resolution Center. They have a code of civil discourse. You'll find that on those blue markers, bookmarks, at your table, but I will also read them from up here. So the guidelines that we'll be using for our conversation this evening include, we'll promote an inclusive environment where diverse perspectives are shared and considered. We'll listen attentively and ask questions to understand others' positions. We'll show respect for ideas and views presented even if we disagree with them. We'll explain our positions by fairly presenting the reasons for them. And we'll avoid personal attacks or other tactics that distract attention from our central topics. And our central topics are, what are the top priorities, characteristics, and things to consider as we look for our next police chief. So that's our agenda for this evening, and we're going to jump right in with question number 1. And the way we'll go through that is, if you'll take that participant input sheet and start by thinking, what are my answers to that question? And make a few notes, and then with the people at your table, when you can see that people are beginning to be finished writing, if someone would be brave and start the conversation, you'll go around the table and ask each person for their thoughts and their ideas. You'll begin to hear some things that you have in common, some things that you can agree upon together. We're then going to bring you a piece of chart paper. Pens are already in the middle of your table, and we're going to ask your group to write the top 3 priorities, and then we're going to ask each table to have a spokesperson and come to the front and share with us your ideas. Now, it looks like at this table you're going to have a treat because you get to hear Councilmember Barbara Bree's ideas so we wanted to acknowledge and thank you for being here this evening. Appreciate that. So, ready, set, go. Your thoughts on your page first, and then you move to group conversation, and then we'll bring you chart paper to work with. If you haven't already, there's a funny word that I've heard, voluntold. Have you voluntold your spokesperson yet? That they're... Uh-oh. I'd like to invite whatever table would like to go first to come up. You're going to put your chart paper right here. Okay. Very good.
We already voluntold.
So we can post this? Yes, please. You can hand it to... Yeah, I can have it back. And I'm going to give you this.
Can you hear me? Okay, so we had quite a bit of consensus going around the table in terms of what we'd written down. Racial profiling and related issues of diversity were high on our lists. Mental health...
Just one sec. Can we have everybody's attention up here, please? Thank you. I'm sorry if I cut off some of your group's conversation before you were truly done, but having our full attention on your presentation, would you mind starting again?
Okay.
Go for it.
So we had quite a bit of consensus on this list, that racial profiling or ending racial profiling was a big priority for us, and I know studies have been done that have documented that it does happen quite a bit. Mental health and homelessness were two areas where we wanted special training in de-escalation of situations where the person may not be able to communicate clearly to the officers or may not even speak English. And PERT, and I'm sorry, Cassie, what does PERT stand for?
Psychiatric Emergency Response
So
Team.
specially trained
Yes.
teams when there is such an issue. Community outreach and relationship building, recruitment and retention, and this was something we talked about quite a bit, and one of our group members is aware that we pay 20% less than the average for the state, and therefore have these problems. And I think going into homelessness in more detail, finding housing in safe situations, knowledge of how to navigate resources, so that the police can help find resources rather than put the person in jail overnight or whatever, and related to that, decriminalization of the behavior that goes with homelessness.
Thank you. Thanks for starting us off. There was another group right ready. All right.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. So within the group that I was with, we discussed training as well. So de-escalation tactics, just that cultural diversity training, so understanding that each community is different and that there's different behaviors and things of that nature when it comes to different cultures, period. We talked about the blue code of silence, so ending that practice, transparency, community policing, and developing and adopting that model, making sure that whoever comes, that whoever's hired, whether or not is for the chief of police or just is staff, period, to make sure that they don't have a history of racial bias from wherever they come from. Let's see what else. Oh, so requiring body cams and like the release of the footage unedited in any nature, and having creative methods and policies for retention of people of color, especially like their officers of color, and creating a database for stop and frisk.
Can I ask you, what do you mean by, what do you want when you say police reform? What does that mean?
So police reform, so adopting these things, so taking in this community input and not letting it be something that's just for show. So actually taking what's been said here at these different meetings and putting that into practice, or trying to develop some policies, some creative form of practices that shows that everything that was said was heard, and it wasn't just heard, but actually put into action.
Good. Other group? Okay.
Hello, hey everybody, I'm Cyrus, and our table, we had a very lively discussion. Our first priority, of course, is strong public safety protection. We want the police force to be capable of doing its job, so recruiting and retaining good officers is very important to us. Then just running down the list, some of this you've already heard before. We want a police chief who's interested in building community trust with an emphasis on transparency. For example, I think this was mentioned already, how to deal with body cam footage. This is something that should be available to the citizens, to the public. We want the chief to start with a knowledge of the 21st century policing policy that's already been developed in Washington. We should be building on what's already been done in terms of best practices. Also understanding how to deal with cybercrime. These things are what we want our chief to be knowledgeable about, starting the job already. For San Diego, we have some particularly special needs. Our community is very diverse, so we want a chief who's interested in fostering and promoting good training to deal with our homeless community, to deal with the issues of gang violence, to understand how to have a good use of force policy. Immigration is important to us, more in the sense of our table felt that immigration enforcement is a different job than police activity. Mental health, understanding how to deal with folks with mental health issues. And de-escalation is a big factor we'd like the chief to be able to foster in our officers. Also to deal with racial profiling issues, because that's not a part of good, racial profiling is not a good part of policing. We want a chief who can help our officers deal with violence against the police. We want to make sure that our officers are safe out there. We want to ensure the officers have the appropriate tools and technology for their job. So being able to gain the trust of other communities is important, whether it's going to be from state or federal funding. The chief needs to keep our officers with the goods that they need. And then again, about how to deal with body cam footage. Again, for us, it's really important that the chief should be open to making this available, especially to the individuals who have been put onto the footage in the body cam. And lastly, we talked about civilian oversight. We'd like the chief to be coming in with a commitment to cooperating with the Civilian Oversight Board, and that the board should have some teeth, not just be a voice, but something that has a little bit of ability to make sure things are going right.
Thank you, thank you. Another group? There we go, right here. And this is for you.
Our group was very big on training for a lot of different things. Number one, more training on sexual assaults and how victims respond and the kinds of sexual assaults there are. Number 2, much more on cultural and race relations, so that they know how the cultures and different races respond. Definitely more training on less use of force, other methods. Treatment of homelessness, how to deal with them other than just arresting and ticketing. Those were kind of our thoughts, was that we need a police chief who's committed to that kind of training and that kind of. Also, the other priority was equipment for the officers, more 21st century, so that 911 calls are answered quickly, and that the best practices of cooperative cities, and of course the body cams and actually using them. So that was what ours was.
Good, thank you.
These are our answers from Steph's team. We have our name. We thought it was really important to continue to rebuild the numbers of people who are on our police department by recruiting and retaining with the appropriate compensation to make certain that we are competitive with other law enforcement agencies around Southern California and the rest of the state. Language access is really important for the new officers. We have a very diverse community where people speak dozens and dozens of languages. We need to have police officers who can speak those languages as well. Number 2 was community policing, and in that we included neighborhood watch, community outreach and resources. We need to make sure that the chief and the department are working across all of the diverse communities that we have in San Diego in order to build trust and experience with our communities. And dealing with community policing as far as things like the homeless outreach team and some of the other teams that are dealing with some of the issues that we have across the city. And our third issue had to do with the 2 T's, technology and transparency, because we thought we could only have 3 dots, so we did. We put them all together. Body-worn cameras and all of the policies that go along with them are really important. As other people have said, getting that out as soon as possible without violating the confidentiality of police officers will be a challenge because of laws in the state of California that the department must observe, but we have to figure out a way to do it. The call center data, 911 and non-emergency, we have to make sure that we have the most updated and timely information out there. An efficient data collection system is going to be really important. We need updated hardware and software. We need to make sure that every patrol car has the appropriate communication device. What is it called? The mobile data terminal. And that we don't have officers using Thomas guides if they don't have GPS in their cars. And then finally, we need state-of-the-art safety equipment. We have to make sure that our officers are safe when they're out in the field and when they're dealing with the public, especially if they're in a situation that is challenging. Those are our 3.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I think we have 5 tables and 5 reports, so bravo, really good way to begin. I'd like to turn our attention to question number 2. And that question is, what are the top characteristics, qualities, the job, when you think of what's required to address the issues that you've just noted, what are the skills, abilities, knowledge, qualifications, leadership traits that you'd like to see in the next chief? Same process, write your personal notes on that input form first. When you see people are finished writing, then look up and start the table conversation. And then when you're ready, chart them, and we'll do the same report out process. Okay, go. We're going to begin with question number 2.
Okay, so a lot of things were basically kind of repeated at our table. We wanted to make sure that we tried to address as many things as possible. So we want someone who's honest, who's like has a sense of integrity, and not only has that sense but actually follows that. Someone who's experienced and effective, and basically can show a resume of sorts of like their proven past experiences of like success within the communities that they've come from before. Someone who is experienced in like a multicultural environment, so again, looking at diversity, cultural awareness and things of that. Someone who is also experienced with the rank and file system of like, so going through the ranks of becoming like a police officer, potentially doing foot patrol, things of that nature. Someone who has a high moral character and who is of high moral character and has a willingness to do the right thing when the wrong thing is expected and knows the difference between the two. I feel like that's self-explanatory. Again, someone who has proven experience and just a zero tolerance of racism, period. Someone who has a track record of being transparent. Someone who's a good role model, has a good reputation. So that's amongst the community as well as the police force. Someone who's approachable regardless of someone's social economic status, so i.e. homeless people. And making sure that someone is, our next chief of police is open-minded, so both in just learning new things, feedback from community, et cetera, and making sure that SDPD will not be used as ICE enforcers. So that's it.
Good, thank you. Good start. Appreciate it. All right. Want to go next?
He's going to hold it because we did it upside down.
Oh, okay. We have tape.
Oh, you have tape?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have tape? We did it
Yes.
upside down. Oh. Okay.
Yep. Here's this.
My tabletop that I should introduce myself, and I'm Doug Case, and I'm chair of the City of San Diego's Community Review Board on Police Practices. And hi. And we came back into 3 different categories. The first one was the person's personality, and some of the characteristics we thought of were humility, somebody who's inspirational, somebody who listens, is open-minded, and has integrity. Then the second one was background, and obviously somebody with a senior experience, somebody that has no controversy in their past, and somebody who's respected in their current job by both the officers and the community in which they work. And then the third one was capabilities, and we had several categories there. One was cultural competency. Second was data-driven in their decision-making. The third one is a focus on social justice. We thought it would be helpful, not essential, but we thought it would be helpful for a person to be bilingual and to be resourceful.
Nicely done. Good, crisp presentation. Are you ready to go? It's your turn.
Oh, whatever. I don't want a microphone.
Got it.
Can't stand microphones. I have a great speaking voice, honest.
Can I tell you why we use them?
Because you're recording me and I can't stand being recorded. So,
So your voice gets heard for other people who want to watch. Would you?
can I be really loud?
Okay, can I hold it right here while you talk? Go ahead.
I hate
Okay, go
microphones.
ahead.
First was honesty, integrity, and transparency. That goes without saying, probably for anybody that's running our city, mayors, police, et cetera. We would like somebody that comes from a diverse, large city experience. We don't want somebody from, Podunk, Oklahoma, coming here thinking they know how to run our city. We're a border town. We have over 70 languages, I know for a fact, spoken in this city because I work for a school district, and that's how many we have in our school district. The next is somebody who's willing to learn and is open-minded, willing to reach out to the community, to the diverse populations, not just people that are employed, but all the populations of the community to get their input on what's going on. Somebody who's a team builder, who's a good listener. We need our department to feel like they're a team and that they're valued. We need them to be listening to everyone, not only the police, but the community, and that includes people that don't have a home. Someone who has a good sense of humor, because by God, I would not want to be the police chief. And I think you need a good sense of humor, personally, to do anything when you're dealing with the public. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Someone that's got a clean background, and that can be verified that it's a clean background, that there are community leaders in the diverse areas that will say, yeah, we will stand by this person. Also, somebody that's committed to not to be the ICE of San Diego. SB 54 just passed today. We are not here to ask people where they are from, it's about enforcing city laws, not anybody else's idea of what the laws should be. That's it. You're welcome.
We want somebody with a visionary mindset, not a rubber stamp of what's always been done in the profession. We want a strong commitment to human and civil rights of everyone. We want a tendency to mediate rather than to escalate, and a person who has natural empathy. We want a strong ethical background and transparent communication, and we hope that person exists.
Nicely done, nicely done. Got it. Tape.
Thank you. Vanna and Vanna are here. This is from Steph's team number 2. We agree that integrity is really important, that we want somebody who is a problem solver with a proven track record, forward-thinking and innovative. We want somebody who is an excellent communicator across diverse communities, because as you said, there are 70 languages spoken here, and approachable. Somebody who is result-oriented. Somebody who commands empathy. There's a sense of understanding and a command presence, and they have to have a sense of humor. That was our attempt at a sense of humor. Thank you for laughing. Ability to motivate others. We want somebody who is a mentor, but not just a mentor, but somebody who is an inspirational mentor. They have to be nonpartisan. They can't have feelings. They can have feelings one way or the other. They cannot express them when they're dealing with the public or with the department. And we want somebody who does the right thing rather than doing things right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nicely done on question 2. May I ask you to focus on question 3? We're going to ask the question, is there anything else that the City of San Diego should consider when selecting the next police chief? This could be short, it could be sweet, it could be your most intensive question. We'll use the same process. Just if there are any more thoughts that we need to capture tonight, this is the time. Make the note on your paper, talk about them, let's get them on charts, and we'll use that same process. Thanks. About done. When I hear a quiet come over the group, it seems like that might be time for us to do the report outs on question number 3. We're going to do the same process. We're on the home stretch, so thank you for hanging in there, and I'd like to invite whatever first group would like to make their presentation. All right. I see up and ready.
Hello. One thing that we were really concerned about is we wanted to make sure that the selection committee The selection committee's choice of a candidate reflects the community input regarding the police chief. We would be extremely disappointed if after all of these forums and all of these things have gone on, we see that the candidates that are chosen and the ultimate police chief who's chosen does not actually reflect what we've asked for. So that is our number one thing. Transparency, once again, is extremely important. And we want transparency in the search process. And that includes the search committee members. We want to know who those search committee members are before the police chief is chosen. We want to know when they're announced. We want to know who they are. We do not want a secret search committee. And then the last thing, we want an equitable consideration of both in-house and outside candidates. We don't want our, the police officers who are now working in the San Diego Police Department, we don't want them to be excluded from the search. We want them to be included and given a fair consideration. And we also want outside candidates considered. We just want to get the very best police chief. Oopsie.
Good. Thank you. Next group. Thank you. Okay, we have tape. We're on it.
Thank you. All right, I should just say ditto and sit down. But we want the names of the committee members made public. We want them to represent diverse interests. We want the finalists, the 2 or 3, announced and and have them make community presentations. And we want the best candidate for the job, whether from here or from the nationwide search. So that's it.
Oh, look at each other's paper. All right, thank you. Next, come on up. You look like you could have used a second sheet of paper.
All right, I'll go quick. I know it looks like a lot. We talked about, we wanted the new police chief to plan to address a lot of critical issues facing our communities, things that are really troubling, like sex trafficking, rape kits that aren't processed, sexual assaults, domestic violence, gangs and drugs that are, hurting our communities. We also wanted them to have a lot of experience and knowledge of crime prevention programs. We don't want to just have the police dealing with crimes after they've occurred, but before in prevention programs. We want the person to be able to navigate the political climate that is present in all cities, and particularly in San Diego, of course. We expect a nationwide search. We expect this process is going to result in a nationwide search for the best. This is America's finest city. We deserve the best that the nation has to offer in recruiting a top candidate. We want unsolved murders, particularly of African-American young men and young women in the community to be solved. We want, their cases worked on. We want the Citizens Review Board to have actual investigative and subpoena power. We don't want toothless tigers. We don't want these situations where we don't really have the power that we think that review board should have. We want Protect and Serve to be a real living model and embodiment of how our policing happens for all people in San Diego. We definitely want transparency, as other groups have mentioned, in the hiring selection, and we want that panel that is doing the hiring to be diverse. Just like we want the police chief to come from a diverse background in terms of their experience. And we don't want militarization of our police. We want community input in the new technologies that are bound to be selected as the years go by. Things are very different now than they were 10 years ago in technology. We know there's going to be new technology purchased. We want community input as part of that. And most importantly, we just want the input of all these people who've come together to have mattered in the hiring process. We don't want this to be for nothing. As one of our community members said, we want it to have mattered, that we came out and we spoke our minds, and we want the city to listen.
Thank you. All right, last 2 tables right up here. All right.
We agree with everything that you've all said, but we also want to add that we think the qualifications of the person, she or he, should come first, and that we should strongly consider local talent. We don't necessarily advocate for promoting from within, but they should also be in the mix. The police chief should be hired and fired by the mayor and the city council, not just the mayor. I don't know if that violates whatever contracts they have, but that's what we think. And we think the compensation has to be excellent or above excellent in order to attract the best people. We were trying to do a web search of compensation around the country, and what we came up with was the assistant sheriff in Las Vegas makes $165,000 a year. That means the sheriff is making a lot more than that. And we think that in order to attract the best, we have to pay the best. And somebody like Sheriff Lombardo from Las Vegas would be sort of an ideal model for what we need as a new chief.
Thank you, thank you. All right, one more group.
You can hold my mic.
I'm happy to. I can do that.
Okay, so basically we did the same process as everybody else. We want transparency in the process itself. And we wanted a diversity in the hiring process. In other words, we want community members involved. We want the police obviously involved, and cultural leaders also involved. We don't want it to be a secret group of people. We want the community involved. We didn't get this added, but there was that if whoever you've selected, they go out and kind of do a question and answer series and maybe surprise them with a little something to see how they react to what happens, because, if you don't know what's going to happen and they don't react well, then maybe we don't want them. Also, a willingness to make a long-term commitment and not be the resting ground. They're going to retire from here. They're the short-timer version. We're coming into San Diego. It's a beautiful place to live. I'll do my 2 years and then I retire. We're not looking for that. We want somebody with at least 5 years commitment. Also, we want a wide search from Florida to Alaska, Hawaii to New York, all over. I'm not saying that we don't have somebody here, but we have problems here. And we don't want the problems to continue, so it's time to look elsewhere as well. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, it looks like we have heard from each of the tables on all 3 questions. Please let me observe that you were thoughtful and deliberative and really considered in the information that you presented tonight. You were a small and mighty group. So want to acknowledge the concern about your input being heard and ask you for several other ways that you could continue to put in information. On your agenda, at the bottom of the agenda, there is the website that Scott mentioned earlier. On that website is the survey. It's not there. Okay, it's sandiego.gov/next chief. That'll get you there. What you'll see on that site is the information about all the community forums. You'll be able to watch any of the videos from the prior forums that you weren't able to attend, and there's also a button to take the survey. It's in Google Docs, so it can be translated into any language that people require. So if you'd like to continue your input, or if you have family and friends that weren't able to make it this evening, and you'd like to provide them that survey link, please do. We want to capture your input that you wrote on your individual pages. There's you can either leave them right on the table and we know to look for them and grab them. We also have those in Spanish. If there's anybody that you feel might benefit by providing data on the Spanish forum, please take that with you. We have one more forum next Tuesday evening in San Isidro, and that information is in the middle of your table. You have a question? The officers are, the first place this input goes will be to the recruitment firm, who will take the data and begin to craft the job announcement and the job expectations. So the police officers know, but the people who are supporting the recruitment and the selection for the police chief, yes.
No, are they taking a similar survey?
Are they taking a similar, yes, yes. The information is, they are residents and individuals as well as employees, and so they absolutely can take the information, the survey. Yes, sorry, I got your question wrong.
Will there be a formal process for them to have the same type of opportunity that we had, rather than just hope that they take the survey?
You know, I'm not the person to be answering these questions. At this point, the way that we're asking for input is through the survey and not as a forum inside the department. But we also have a lot of FAQ answers that are on the website, so maybe some of the other questions that you might be curious about in terms of the data and what's next would be answered on the frequently asked questions on the website as well. So we're going to close tonight. This is not a question and answer moment at this time. So, how long the survey will be open? Until October 13th. Thank you.
I have a survey question.
Survey question.
Did the survey change just recently?
So
I took the survey and then I've been told that there is now a new survey out.
it's the same survey, and the Google Analytics makes the priority of the answers that you can choose swap up, so that it isn't a predetermined that we've giving you the priority answers. So the Google Analytics changes up the order of answers. So it looks different, but it's the exact same thing on the survey. Okay, so I want to thank you really for coming out tonight, for sharing your input, for having your voice heard, and we are adjourned.